Hello everyone, it's Ben from PCGamesN again, and Matt is here.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about, as the exceptionally spooky things on screen are probably informing you, Resident Evil 7.
Yeah, that one.
That one, the seventh Resident Evil.
It doesn't come with a Resident Evil
7. Right, hang on, are you confirming there's no point in the entire game where that happens?
Well, maybe not. No, it doesn't.
Exclusive information right here on PCGamesN. So other than it not having... Jesus Christ. Well, that happens.
Yep. Say hello to Marguerite.
So Marguerite is one of the villains, I believe. So go on. What's going on in Resi 7?
Right. So say hello to the Baker family. They're nice, aren't they? So the Baker family are a group of psychopaths that live in a house in the deep south of America. You play a guy called Ethan Winters, and he's looking for his wife Mia. She's been missing for 3 years, and basically the lead is this house, and he's going to look for her there.
And they are 100% normal human beings, nothing wrong with them whatsoever.
Oh, no, nothing whatsoever. You can see in the video that, she's looking like a particularly normal human. No, right, so they're awful. They are one of the most horrendous sets of people I've seen in a video game, I think. There's a sort of almost Devil's Rejects, Evil Dead sort of feel to them. Basically they're going to hunt you down through this house that most of the game is set in.
Right, and how do you feel that compares to old Resident Evils? Because Spooky House, that's quite Resident Evil. Certainly 1 through 2, maybe 3 as well. But creepy southern family hunting you throughout a house, that's a little less. It's usually more zombies and infected or whatever. So how do you feel it rides that line?
Right, so I'd say I think a lot of people might come into Resident Evil 7 with kind of this thought that it's not going to be like previous Reses. I think visually and stylistically it's very much influenced by the West. It's probably got more of a, let's say, an Outlast kind of vibe to it, maybe a little bit of Amnesia, because it feels more grounded than those. There's not the campness there. There's not any of the the heavy violence or action basis of kind of Resident Evil 4 maybe, or the ones past that. What it is though, it is a very traditional Resident Evil in the fact that it's about being in an area that has lots of sections that are gated off. And basically the structure is finding the keys to open those areas and progress the plot. So very much a case of solving puzzles to get those keys. Some of them involve kind of following small plot threads that are revealed in pieces of sort of notes or newspapers that are left around the house, and that helps you guide you to where maybe a key is, or a key card, or perhaps a specific item that is required. Some of them use how classically in Resi you used to have to twist an item to find something on it. Yeah, so that 3D revolving item screen. That as well. So it's very much a game that is about puzzles to further the plot.
It seems to ride that line of an old school game without it being super frustrating, at least based on what I've seen of it and based on the footage. Parts of it are very, very old school, items kind of appearing out of nowhere as just a thing in the world to open a lock, for example. But then it isn't really, really annoying.
No. So the thing that I really liked about it is it's actually not a difficult game. It's got its challenges, and there's plenty of fear to be had and stuff like that. But the actual puzzles are very logical. There's not. I think there was a habit in the old days of having really, really tough puzzles that just weren't logical. This is those same sort of style of puzzles, but very much kind of you're not going to get frustrated by them. It's quite obvious within maybe looking at them for literally a few seconds what you've got to do. It's just that you then have to figure it out.
There's quite a lot of action going on with what we're seeing at the moment, fighting off these, I don't know what you'd even call them.
Mold monsters is what I've dubbed them.
That both manages to describe them and take away a small amount of the fear I feel while looking at them. So, we're seeing a lot of action here. How action heavy do you think it is, kind of versus maybe just being spooked out all the time?
Yeah, so it's not. I think the trailers make it out to be much more like Outlast, which is essentially a game where you're in terrible fear for the entirety of the game, and basically because you've got no weapons in that game, you can only hide. Resident Evil 7 is not that game. Apart from the puzzles, you've actually got quite a lot of combat. It's not as combat heavy as like anything after Resident Evil 4, but it's slightly heavier than the earlier Resident Evils. There's only really the mold monsters that you're going to be fighting aside from the Baker family.
Right.
Don't expect, we're not going back to zombies. This is very much a new chapter in Resident Evil, therefore there's new enemies. So you've got these mold monsters. But yeah, the combat is definitely there. There's a good sort of third, I think, you know, maybe to half of the game spent battling monsters.
So how does that play into stuff like, say, inventory management, which was such a big deal in previous Resident Evil games?
Yeah, you don't quite carry around the massive briefcase that you used to, kind of like when you know, if you think back to Resident Evil 4 and you got Leon Kennedy with this massive briefcase. You've instead got a backpack, and you can pick up various backpacks as you progress through to make sure that your inventory is more open. But we're talking kind of like maybe a dozen slots at most in there, of which a weapon will take up 2. It also adds a crafting system to it. So there's always been sort of very basic sort of crafting in some of the Resident Evils, but this is you have chemicals that you can find in the world, and mixing those with various different items you find, like mix it with gunpowder, you make bullets. If you mix it with herbs, you can make a medical solution, which you've probably seen in the video, gets splashed over his hand, and that magically brings you back to life. You get to see your vitals on the little Apple Watch. It's very much... You've got that issue because you've got such a small inventory set of slots. There is a lot of swapping things around. When you get to save point areas, you can actually, you've got a lockbox and you can put things in there to make things a little bit easier, but obviously you need to make sure everything you need for the journey ahead is on your person.
Sure. So, like, did you ever find that annoying? Like, was it ever frustrating? Did it feel like you'd gone back to, 97 and you were once again trying to figure out, okay, I need these 4 keys and these 7 other items, and I need to make sure I got some health and some ammo? Or did you feel like it kind of did its job of keeping you in suspense but not actually getting in the way of you having fun?
It's surprisingly not frustrating at all, and I think it's because like the world has enough items in it for you to get by. So for example, in these sort of games, you'd normally be sort of stifled for ammunition. I found for the most part I wasn't. Ben, you'll know because you've been seeing me play some of this as well, but I've played it through twice now. I found that on my second playthrough that ammo was a little bit scarcer, and I can't particularly say why, because I think like there's always items in similar places, but I think they change.
Well, I think there was one point where you reloaded because you either died or we stopped playing for a little bit, and then when you came back the second time, there was a different bit of ammo in a different in the same place that some other piece of ammo was before.
So there are particular areas that are designated for spawning loot, but they don't always have to be ammo. So I guess sometimes there's a little bit of the luck of the draw there, but I'd say overall you're not going to be in that position where you think, oh Christ, I've absolutely got nothing to defend myself with, because it's not a game where you can really hide from the enemies. It's not Outlast at all. It is, you have to combat these guys. But no, I was never particularly frustrated by the lack of things I could carry, because I always felt that with a little bit of thought, you could actually make sure you carried exactly what you needed. You know that you're always going to need some health potions. So you can fit 3 into a stack, I believe. So 1 stack is probably going to get you through an area. It's probably worth pointing out that you have to save at there's like cassette players. You have to save at those. But when you die and you respawn, you don't just go back to a previous save point. There are respawn points throughout, checkpointing systems throughout the game. So that helps that not to be so frustrating. And I guess if you're dying over and over again, you just know, okay, I'll work my way back to one of the save rooms and go back to my lockbox and rearrange my inventory and hopefully have something that's required for this point.
So I suppose that's kind of all the technical bits of it. But how did it make you feel? Because obviously with a game like this, certainly with the way it's been marketed, people are expecting to cat their pants at this one. They're expecting to be pretty scared here. So how did you find it in that area? Yeah,
it's certainly terrifying, and
good, it's I think
it's one of the sort of games where because of the fear strikes you from the very beginning. Like the opening, you've got an opening that leads into kind of like your first meeting with the Baker family, and the thing I really like is from there you know that those are your villains. Yes, there are the mole monsters that infect the house as well, but they're incidental to the fact that you know through the entire game that you're going to have to face off against these 3 different family members, and they are kind of, I guess, the main bosses of the game. And it's just that idea that as you're going through, those people could be anywhere, and it's not done like Alien Isolation, where kind of like they can be stalking you throughout the entire house, and they could be anywhere. They are in scripted areas of the house. But the feeling that you don't know, because you don't know what the narrative is, you can't tell where they're going to jump out at you, so you're constantly in this terrifying fear that, well, what's going to happen next? And they don't build them necessarily up as huge characters. They could do with maybe a little bit more sort of like personality, but there's enough there for you to actually truly sort of fear them, and that does wear off as the game continues, as you get used to it. And I think all sort of frightening games are guilty of that the fear does wear off. But it's certainly, combined with jump scares and that creeping dread that's all the way through it. And the fact is, it's one of the most grisly games I've ever played.
Yeah, some of the stuff that you're seeing, like while you're watching the video, is pretty goddamn horrifying.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah, it's disgusting as pal. Like, there are points where I felt, genuinely nauseated by it. But I think that all goes together to the fact that, yeah, it's a great horror game.
All of that considered, and were you to perhaps give it a score, let's say at random out of 10?
Oh, a numerical score.
Yes. Where do you think you would bung it? And any final thoughts?
Yeah, I honestly, I think it's a 9. Mm-hmm. It's probably actually my favourite Resident Evil. Certainly since 4, if not kind of like the earlier ones. I think even if you're a Resident Evil diehard, you're definitely going to find very Resident Evil things in here, just because the trailers don't particularly show those. There's definitely things for you to love. If you're new, definitely get in. This is a great jumping on point, but I think it's going to please people across the board, even if they don't expect it to.
All right, sounds good. And I'll never forget some of the things that I've seen. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please do subscribe to the channel for more like this. Check out Matt's full review, which should be linked in the description below. And we'll see you next time for more.